Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Sellerboard Show. My name is Vladdy Gordon, and my today's guest is Brian Johnson. Brian is the founder of PPCscope.com, which is a PPC management software for Amazon sellers. And he also runs a pretty big agency where he helps seven-figure Amazon sellers basically run their PPC ads. So we talked about keywords, how to find keywords, how many keywords you need. We talked about campaign structure. We went pretty much into the detail and discussed some technical stuff. And we also talked about CTR, click-through rate and conversion rate, what those numbers mean, what normal values are, what kind of values you need to look for or to optimize for, and also how to interpret those numbers because they can tell you a lot about your product and about even about your pictures and listing. So this is going to be very detailed and very specific. I hope you'll enjoy this. Don't forget to give us a like and to subscribe to our channel if you're watching this on YouTube. Before we jump in, I'd like to mention our software, sellerboard.com. Sellerboard is the world's most accurate profit analytics tool for Amazon sellers. So our mission is to be your profit analytics tool and to show you your profits in real time as accurately as possible, as precisely as possible, with the option to drill down into every period of time, every product, every SKU group by brand, by marketplace, by channel. So give it a try. The link is in the description, sellerboard.com, and we have a free 1-month trial, and after that it's only $19 a month. And now let's start the show. Hello, Brian. Thanks for being here.
How's it going? Glad to be here. Thank you.
Hi. So Brian, I believe that most of our listeners already know you, but maybe just for those who don't, you can introduce yourself.
Okay, certainly. So my name is Brian Johnson. I've been in e-commerce for about 12 years now. I actually started out on eBay, and I was selling money counting equipment, like bank counters, coin sorters, those kind of products. I did that for about 7 years through, across multiple vendors and across eBay and my own website and everything. So I have that kind of e-commerce. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I came over to the dark side, over to Amazon. And within a year, I realized that there just was not enough training at all or resources available for the advertising in order to teach me. So I had to figure it out myself. And so once I started figuring it out myself, I also saw that, okay, I need to collaborate with other people. It's one of the reasons why I created that community Facebook group for advertising. And it just kept on growing from there. I'd come out with, I started doing coaching and consulting and starting, helping people out, helping to learn the basics. And after a while, I had enough that I could put together a course. At the same time, I had also created software to make life easier for me. And everybody else wanted to start using it too. And then ultimately today, my primary focus is I still have the course and the software in the community, but my main focus is definitely my advertising agency for brands that sell on Amazon.
All right. So are you also an active seller?
So the kind of products that I sell, so I don't maintain a brand itself. What I do is I tend to have, I don't know if it's, my wife calls it charity sometimes, I think, but it is, I get a lot of people who reach out to me. Sometimes they're sellers who got in, they bought products, and they really struggled with knowing what to do. They followed instruction, but they decided this is not for me. But at the same time, they end up with like, I've got 1,000 units and I've got no plans of selling it. I'm just going to, set it on fire or whatever,
Yeah.
And so usually what I'll do is I mean, those kind of products, I'll say it's like, well, how much do you want for it? You've seen those posts where people say, hey, I'm getting out of the business,
Yeah.
I'll sell off my product, and I just make a fair offer to them, and if it works, great. Then I, acquire their products, and so my product line is very eclectic. There's no consistency between the products,
Mm-hmm.
but they're products that I know that, obviously with my expertise in advertising on Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
I know that I can promote, right? So those are the ones that I'll actually purchase. And ultimately, I don't reorder the products. I simply just, I help somebody out. I help somebody exit,
Mm-hmm.
when they've already exhausted all their efforts.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I can liquidate it for more than I put into it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
that's kind of
Interesting.
that's my selling that I'm doing now.
Nice. I've been an Amazon seller as well, so I'm not active anymore, but um, I've actually never managed to run my PPCs profitably. So the only
Oh,
thing that I used PPC for launching, obviously, because you kind of don't care whether it's profitable or not. You just want to rank. And
yeah.
I think I kind of used them to support my rankings, right? So if you see, okay, probably you should like push the keyword a little bit. So this is how I would use PPC. But actually, I've never ever made any profit on PPC. So it's interesting. I think your story is interesting. You help people liquidate just by using PPC.
Yeah, it can be done. It can be done well. So yeah.
So let's dive into this discussion, because I know that this is definitely a very important topic for our listeners. So, what is PPC for you mainly? Like, is it for launch? Is it for profit? Is it for break even?
All
Or
of the above.
is it all
Yes, absolutely.
of this?
So obviously, I work with a variety of clients. Most of the brands that I work with in my agency are typically, multi-million-dollar sellers or large brands that sell on Amazon, and so we get to work on a bigger scale there. But I have certainly worked with plenty of sellers. I do, there's. I used to do coaching. I don't do the direct coaching anymore, but I used to do coaching with all sizes. So ultimately what it comes down to, and this is something I speak more about at some of the seller conferences now, is more about it, not so much, hey, use this tactic because it's here's a hack that works or something like that. It's more about where do you focus your attention as a new seller or a young seller that is looking at advertising. The first thing that we typically want to do as when we're selling a new product is we want to figure out, if we don't know the product very well, oftentimes we source the products based off of opportunity in the marketplace. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay, nobody else is selling this, but people are still wanting it. I may not know the product that well. The product is an opportunity. I don't necessarily bond, or I don't necessarily know
Yeah.
who that audience is. So oftentimes we use the advertising, and we spend a bunch of money on advertising in order to learn the search term, the terminology the shoppers are using in order to find, to find my product and to purchase my product, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is that it can be expensive right out of the gate, but it's probably one of the most effective ways of really learning how to attract that audience that actually is going to buy your product.
Mm-hmm.
You have certain key metrics such as the click-through rate and the conversion rate that are telling you how good of a job your advertising is doing at pulling in that shopper into your listing, and the conversion rate that tells you how good of a job your listing is doing at selling the product to that shopper.
Yeah.
Right. Ultimately, this is where it typically starts going wrong for most sellers, where it starts getting perpetually, unprofitable, is they forget a key step is the advertising. First and foremost is to identify who your audience is. Okay. And second would be for new product launches to gain sales velocity. But a lot of the times the mistake that's made is we try to advertise across as many keywords as we can possibly show, thinking that that's going to increase our keyword ranking. It doesn't, because really what it comes down to is we're not going to rank higher. We're not going to increase sales velocity and rank higher for an organic keyword unless we can focus our advertising on very specific keywords that we know, first and foremost, convert well for my product, have a high conversion rate for my product. And then also there's not so much competition that's going to hold me down from going up the organic listings.
Okay.
And that requires some research by the seller. It requires them to look at each keyword, look at how much competition, look at how well it's converting for your keyword before you take all of your ad spend and start focusing it down on just 5 to 10 keywords that you really want to move up the organic ranks. That's essentially what you need to do. Instead of advertising for 500 keywords, you focus that down to 5, 10, maybe 20 keywords, but all ones that already are shown to have a high conversion rate and have room for you to gain higher organic ranking.
Okay, I have a couple of questions actually. So you said you're using PPC to research, right? Or just find keywords. So how do you do that exactly? Do you run like an auto campaign or to find those initial deep keywords?
Yeah. So the automatic campaign, it used to be the go-to campaign for keyword research. I don't agree with that anymore. It is better for I don't want to use the word lazy, but at the same time, if you don't have enough time to manage your ads, probably turning on an automatic campaign with a relatively low bid is probably the simplest way to go, knowing that you don't have enough time to actually work on it. But I'd rather start with an automatic campaign with a low bid and just let it run, maybe do some kind of optimization periodically, search term negative matching, that type of thing. Than to take it all on, get overwhelmed, and then stop doing it altogether. So an automatic campaign is kind of easy, but it's definitely not the best when it comes to keyword research. The reason for that is that there's plenty of keyword research tools that are available on the market now that make it a lot easier as long as they're used correctly. So like our team, for instance, we use probably we use 3 different keyword research tools within our agency, but then we also have our own internal, like our own proprietary internal research tools as well. We start out typically with, we like Viral Launch keyword results. We like Helium 10 keyword results. We like the keywordtool.io keyword results. Sometimes when we're looking for more international language results, we'll use something, Sellex has their own keyword research tool, for instance. The big mistake that most sellers make is simply just saying, oh, this keyword research told me 200 keywords. I'm going to run advertisements on those 200 keywords. What they don't do, what all keyword research tools do not do well, is they don't filter for relevance well. Some will come up and say, oh, this has a higher score here, or they'll even call it a relevance score. But ultimately, the best method to reduce the number of keywords that you're actually advertising on by relevance to your product is to manually look down and read each keyword and say, is this keyword directly relevant to the product that I'm selling? And if it's not, don't advertise on it. You may be losing, some small sales here and there, but generally make sure that you're trying to focus in on maybe 200 keywords, 200 to 500 keywords at most, that are directly relevant to the product that you're selling.
200 to 500 per, is that per ASIN or per variation?
That's per product. I mean, if you've got variations, then you're going to have some overlap.
Okay.
Maybe the same. But yeah, generally, I would say when you're starting out, shoot for researching 200 keywords. Arbitrary number, but yeah, 200 keywords is probably a good one. Make sure that you look at each one of those to make sure that it's directly relevant with your product. It definitely describes what the product that you're selling.
Okay, so suppose we've done that. We have 200 keywords. You mentioned CTR and conversion rate. right? So CTR is basically how many people click on the ad when they see it, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And the conversion rate is how many buy after they clicked. So I think, at least I never thought about these two metrics. So I've always seen them, right? You have the conversion rate, but it's kind of, I don't know, I thought it's always the same, more or less, right? But can you explain us more about those two? So what would I have to optimize, or like,
Okay.
how do they help
So
me?
part of this is, I'll mix in here that there are a lot of experts in the field teaching different methods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of tools available for us as sellers to use. A lot of the tools and experts will suggest, well, run advertisement on the most competitive keywords that have the highest search volume. And some of these tools, they all have different numbers as far as like, oh, this has 100,000 monthly searches.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that if you, first of all, if you focus all your advertising on just high search volume keywords, for instance, those typically are so generic. They're short tail. They're one or two words. They're so generic that they could apply to millions of different products and different audiences. And so it's not very specific to your product. In other words, somebody could be searching on that. Yeah, your ad may show, you may pay for them to click through on it, but more than likely you're going to have a really low click-through rate because it's shown to the wrong audience too many times, and only a small portion of that audience actually sees your product ad as similar to what they're looking for, and they'll actually click through on it.
But so why is it bad? I'm sorry. Why is it a bad thing? Because you pay per click, right?
It is true from a cost standpoint, but from a targeting standpoint, you're much more likely, because just because you get the click doesn't mean you get the conversion. Because the fear is that the ad is typically very small in comparison to other product listings in some cases.
Okay.
So what usually happens is you get curiosity clicks where people are saying, it's like, oh, I'm going to click on the first ads thinking that is what I'm looking for, and then they get into the listing and go, oh, this is not what I want at all, and they'll immediately leave. They'll immediately go back out and search again. You can usually tell that when so for instance, if you have a very low click-through rate, it usually means that you're running ads on keywords to an audience that doesn't agree with you, doesn't think that your ad is relevant to what they're looking for. Usually conversion rate is going to correlate to that. In other words, if you have a very low click-through rate, you usually have a very low conversion rate. Now,
what's a low click-through rate? Is it like 1%?
So low click-through rate, something that's below. So the general range that we would want to see is something like maybe in a 0.4% to 1% click-through rate. Anything that gets down below, like say 0.25 or even worse, 0.2% click-through rate, you're missing your audience.
Okay.
Your ads are not getting in front of the correct audience. And it doesn't take that much to go from 0.2 to 0.4, where you're off from your audience versus you're only catching half your audience versus catching more of the audience. But the click-through rate is your first signal that whether or not you're actually getting your ads in front of the correct audience. And I would say that if it's below a click-through rate of 0.2%, you're missing your audience. You're not targeting the correct audience. Ultimately, you probably will see something similar on the conversion rate, where the conversion rate is very low. Something below 10% conversion rate. Single-digit conversion rate is a problem because it can be more expensive. It requires you to spend a lot more on advertising in order to get the same amount of sales that maybe a competitor is doing. There are unique situations where you get one high and one low. So in other words, you get a high click-through rate and a low conversion rate. That basically says that you're targeting the right audience, but then your product listing is scaring them away.
Okay, maybe you have.
Or you're getting a really low click-through rate and a high conversion rate. You're catching the low click-through rate is saying that you're getting in front of the correct audience, but only a small amount is actually, a small amount of the correct audience.
Yeah.
Because once they get over to your product listing, they're convinced, oh, this is the product I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So really, if you have a low click-through rate and a high conversion rate, that's actually a good scenario, because that just means you need to tune your advertising and you need to go out and find who your audience really is. Build off of what is converting for you.
And by the way, I think actually that was exactly my problem. I was targeting like short tail keywords, and they were very expensive, right? Is that also true from your experience? Like long tail keywords are less expensive, right?
Yeah, they're easier to get in front of an audience, and you say it's like, oh, I'm getting all these ad impressions, and I see my ad, and so it's working. But if it's being shown to the wrong audience that's not looking for your product, because usually the easiest way to do that is if you have a search term, maybe it's getting a bunch of search volume. If you can say, well, that search term is directly related to my product. It's really generic. You could say it's like, oh, it's a dog bowl, for instance. I don't know. It's like I sell, dog bowls, and the term is dog bowl. Okay, yeah, those two match up. But maybe you go out, and if you maybe you're getting a really low click-through rate. So the really low click-through rate could say that maybe your ad is not compelling, or maybe it's missing the audience. So what I usually do is I'll just take that keyword, I'll search on Amazon, and I'll look at the results, and I'll compare it to what is my ad listing, what is my listing compared to all the results come back. We might find out it's like, oh, there's a bunch of different products that are not related, that are not like mine, that are related to dog bowl, like maybe dog bowl stands, dog bowl covers, dog bowl stencil printing. There's, whatever, two portion, dog bowl, cat and dog bowls, all these different products that if you just search, you're going to see it's like, oh, wow, there's a lot more products out there that are related to dog bowl that are not my specific dog bowl.
I get it. Yeah.
So that's kind of like where you can just kind of see it's like, okay, are all the products that come up for this search directly relevant to my product, or is there a bunch of other products that are that people could be looking for using the same search terminology? The second thing, of course, is if you have a brand new product, if your ad is showing up there and you've got your price is $5 higher than everybody else, and you have no reviews, and you've got a low quality image, and your title is keyword stuffed, or not well formatted, it's just not going to present as a viable option compared to everything else that's being shown up that has a ton of reviews. It's selling for $10, and I'm not saying to reduce your price. I'm just saying pick your battles. Really choose where are you running your ads compared to what your competitors or the other listings around it are showing. That low click-through rate is a signal that your ad is not showing well in the results compared to what's being returned.
Wow. Interesting. So I was going to ask if it's just about the keywords, but you kind of answered it already. So it's about images, titles, reviews, obviously, and the price, of course.
That all has an influence, but yeah, most of the time it's more likely the situation where you're selling a wooden dog bowl and somebody else is using the term dog bowl in order to look for a stand for that dog bowl, or some other, 50 other different products that are not yours.
Okay, so suppose we've managed to find some keywords, and we kind of optimized or found keywords which are performing well, right? So what's the next step? Is it like optimizing the bid, or?
So I don't know if you've seen, for PPC Scope, there's a document that I give out, and the way that it's called the 9-step optimization checklist. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but it goes through. It shows two ways. One is it shows how it's strictly just for optimizing search terms and keywords within campaigns. It's not necessarily for growing sales or identifying new audience. It's just for like, how do I keep the costs under control? But what that 9-step checklist does is it presents it in two ways. One is it says, here are the specific filters or metrics that I'm looking for. I'm looking for things where I have at least 1,000 impressions. I have at least 5 clicks. I have no orders. And if that situation occurs, then this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to negative exact match, or I'm going to reduce a bid or something, right? There's an action that goes with that. And then there's also, of course, there's a set of instructions. Here's where to do it inside of my software. But it doesn't require my software because you're given the instructions right there as far as what I'm looking for.
Okay.
And so if that's done on a weekly basis, or if you're just getting started every couple of weeks, most people say that that helps them keep their costs under control considerably. Now, that does require, we haven't really touched on campaign structure, but campaign structure is important. There's a lot of different theories when it comes to, should I have one keyword in a separate campaign by itself, or should I have
one product, one ad group per SKU?
Well, that's what I teach. So I teach specifically, I've got no problem as far as just using one, I'll use an automatic campaign, and then I'll also use a manual campaign. And the manual campaign, I'll have 3 ad groups for each product. So I'll have an exact match, I'll have a phrase match, and I'll have a broad match type ad group for each ASIN.
Wow.
So if I have three product variations for this one, I'll have them on the same campaign. But then I'll have, I might have 9 ad groups, because I want to separate each of the products from the other products. I also want to separate the different keyword match types also, in part because in order to make choices as far as your optimization goes, the weakness about ad groups is that if you negative match, basically if you block ads through a negative match on a search term in an ad group that has multiple products and has multiple match types, that one action can block ads for all products for all match types, which is not what you want, because just because it doesn't work in exact match, it may work great in phrase match, for instance. Or maybe it doesn't work for the blue color, but it works great for the black color. So that's why I separate those, because each product and each match type has its own preference and own search terms and own keywords that it's going to work well on.
That's interesting, but tell me, how do you manage all that? I mean, if you have 10 products, let's say, with maybe 3 variations each, it's going to be like 30, it's going to be 90.
Well, that's where it starts getting into exceptions. Yeah. So this is usually where I will this is kind of, again, picking the battle, focusing, or if you're familiar with the Pareto principle, focus on that 20% that produces 80% of the result, right? I'm a big believer in that. In part because I look at, where you've got a lot of different product variations, I'll typically use the 3 ad group separation in for just the products that are currently, like, getting the ads and converting, to sales. Maybe what I'll do is I'll take my top 3 sellers and I'll use that separated campaign structure, and then I'll actually create one set of broad match ad group, phrase match ad group, exact match ad group, and then pool all the other ones together in each of those. So in other words, I'm kind of letting those cook for a while, if you will, until they start getting more sales, and then I'll bring them out and separate them into their own ad groups.
Okay.
Now, some people like to simply just, when they're starting out, maybe they create a separate campaign for each product in order to control the budget. That's pretty much the only advantage that you're getting by having a separate campaign, is you're able to control the budget. Most of the time that's unnecessary, but if you're just getting started, it's not going to hurt. If you already have campaigns for each product, great. If you already have one campaign and you have separate ad groups for each product, great. Those either of those 2 campaign structures are fine by me.
Okay. So look, you mentioned that kind of set of rules, right? This 9-step guide. Maybe we can link it in the show notes. But let's talk about ACOS for a while. Like, suppose we've done all that, we have all the structure set up, the keywords are right. From my experience, the ACOS is still changing. Even if you kind of optimized already and nothing changes on your side, right? But the ACOS is still moving, right? Is that true?
There's a couple reasons for that. The reason that the ACOS changes constantly. One is you got competition, and they're constantly changing their advertising, how aggressive they are, and they're willing to run more expensive ads when Prime Day is coming up, or the holiday season is coming up, or something. Sometimes you got vendors that run out of stock, and so all of a sudden your advertising changes for a week, and then all of a sudden, it's just like, oh, this is wonderful for a week, and then all of a sudden it goes back. You're like, what happened? Probably they ran out of stock for a week. One of the things that we see throughout the year, though, is this is very seasonal based. Is the conversion rates of products change. As the conversion rates change from week to week, month to month, so will your advertising cost of sale, because it may cost more in order to get the same sale as before.
Yeah.
So your ACOS goes up. And usually what we see is during let's say you sell a gift item that is very popular during the holiday season. Conversion rates typically go up because people are in a buying mode. They're more likely to go out and actually just make purchases instead of just look around at things and then just just window shop, right? They just look at a bunch of different products. This can definitely vary from product to product. If you have a product that has different variations, different sizes, different colors, different patterns, different fabric, things like clothing and sunglasses and cell phone cases and anything that has all these like style and personal preference kind of differences usually have a very, very low conversion rate. Because people look around and they'll spend hours and days looking for just the right one for them personally or for the gift that they're giving. So I don't recommend those products that have a lot of style, color, fit, variations, because the conversion rates are usually really low.
So like you don't recommend them at all, or for PPC optimization?
In general, because you think about it. So ultimately, one of the things that we look to do with advertising is when we go to focus in on a much smaller set of keywords, after we've already learned the audience, we know what search terms convert well for our product. Now we want to figure out which keywords do we want to be aggressive specifically on in the advertising in order to get a higher organic ranking. And a lot of that has to do with competition. That's going to keep you from going up the organic keyword rankings and your conversion rate. You probably have seen many people who have used product giveaway launch services. And they get up to page 1 and they slide right back off again. The main reason for that is because they don't have a conversion rate that is similar to what their competitors have, and so they just can't keep up. Unless they constantly re-promote, then they're just gaming the system, or they're spending a ton on advertising. But in general, if you think about it, advertising is probably only going to increase your sales velocity, the number of units that you sell each day, probably by 20-30%. Not a huge amount. Giveaways, of course, have a very high impact in a short period of time. You can get onto page 2, onto page 1, but most likely you're going to slide right back down again unless you're targeting keywords that have a high conversion rate for your product that also has a high conversion rate. Without that conversion rate, you're not going to rank well. Unless everybody, all your competition, unless everybody who's selling the same kind of product all have low conversion rates like the product you're selling, because it's relative, right? And we don't know what the conversion rate is for the competitor. We kind of have to guess, but ultimately that's usually the first sign is if we try to get up there and then we slide right back down again, our conversion rate is obviously not as high as our competition, who may have spent a lot more time focusing in on specific keywords that they know they have a high conversion rate for.
Interesting.
Your ads will tell you what your conversion rate are,
So in terms of ACOS, do you recommend, if we've done a good job managing everything else, do you recommend moving the bid up and down to adjust your ACAS?
Yeah, I mean, you always want to address the search terms first, because there's multiple search terms that feed into any keyword. That includes exact match type. There's a common belief that there should only be one search term that's going to match up to an exact match keyword. That's not true, because there's plurals, there's prepositions, there's all these other words that can be mixed in with it that Amazon ignores, but you could end up with. I've seen up to, on an exact match keyword, I've seen up to 11 different search terms that feed into one exact match keyword.
Okay.
Which doesn't sound like it should be the case, but Amazon is very loose or sloppy, I guess, when it comes to things like singular versus plural form of words. Words that like with or for and, those things are ignored. And so you can advertise on different keywords that have plurals, that have with and for and some of these other filler words. And numbers, or anything that has 2 letters or less, or it has numbers. Those are often ignored also. Words that are so generic that Amazon just ignores them anyway. Men, women, accessories, supplements, all these things that are used across tens of millions of different products. Amazon just says, I'm just going to ignore that word. Yeah. And most sellers don't realize that. But ultimately, you want to, you want to try to identify what those keywords are. Optimize the search terms that feed into the keywords, and then from there, then you can start adjusting the bid of the keywords to dial it into whatever profitability level you want. In most cases, what we do is we identify, for most keywords, we try to get it just 2 or 3% below what our break-even ACOS is, net profit margin percentage, or break-even ACOS. We bring that down to, like, say, 2 or 3% below, and then we overspend on very specific keywords that we're trying to rank for, that we're trying to increase the number of units that we sell each day to rank higher for, and then it balances out usually to break-even.
That's cool. Actually, we're now coming back to the beginning. So what is PPC? Like, do you, is it more a profit instrument for you, or is it something you primarily use for launch, or is it both?
It really depends on the objective of the brand owner. Usually it's when it's a matter where money is tight and they're feeling the pain of every time Amazon Amazon takes a payment out for advertising, then they want profitability. But they can pretty quickly shift, like, okay, now that I've got profitability, now I want to rank higher organically. Those are opposing forces. It's like you either want profitability or you want ranking. Usually I would say is for products that are launching and for individual keywords that I'm intentionally trying to rank higher for, those are not going to be profitable. Those are going to be expensive. But those are they should be very focused. Either it's product launch is only for 4 weeks maybe. For an individual keyword I'm trying to rank for, maybe that's only for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. As we push that hard, and it's only on one keyword, so we can control that more. Everything else, certainly for products that are more mature, that have been around for long, who have an established set of, they have some organic keyword ranking, and they have both organic sales and ad sales. And as it gets more mature, it's been on the site and selling for a while, then you can focus your advertising more towards getting to profitability because you're already established. So sometimes it's just a case of where you're at in the product life cycle. New launch versus trying to rank versus, okay, I've settled into this is a mature product. I just want profitable ads from there. And so sometimes the objective or the strategy is, it's going to change depending on where the product is in the life cycle. Got it.
So would you, like, for the product launch, would you recommend anything else other than PPC these days? Like, you talked about it a little, but
Well, I mean, there's different things. I mean, that we have as far as needs. If you're building your own list of emails as far as your past buyers, if you launch a product, I would definitely promote to your list, assuming that it's a relevant product to what they've purchased before. Maybe to offer them a special deal or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There certainly are other options out there when it comes to Facebook advertising and YouTube videos and Instagram, getting influencers to promote a product on Instagram, to using, hybrid solutions like, ManyChat and some of these. Some of these are, there's a learning curve. It's kind of it's a barrier to entry where most sellers are not comfortable. There's not a lot of great education when it comes to setting up these other options.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like most of the experts get pretty specialized, kind of like me, where like I'm top of my game as far as expertise when it comes to Amazon advertising, but don't ask me about YouTube advertising or Facebook advertising. I'm going to have to defer to somebody else on that.
Okay.
So we do see where there's a lot of different options that you can do within the Amazon advertising ecosphere. For somebody at my level that needs to know all these things and has the staff. I mean, our advertising our advertising agency has 26 employees, and so we have enough staff, we have enough technology, we have all the resources that we need in order to manage all of this. That's why we typically work with larger brands.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just getting started out, keep it as simple and focused as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to create, don't listen to the podcast of the week, well, other than yours, of course. The podcast is, hey, go out and just do this thing, and there's plenty of, podcasts that just go out there and say, oh, I wanted to be first to bring up this new strategy, but maybe they don't think it through very well. And most sellers don't really have a good understanding, and so they get into trouble. It gets really expensive. Ultimately, run just enough advertising on a couple hundred keywords in order to figure out what those search terms are that your audience is using, and then shrink your advertising down to just what's working well.
Nice.
Don't try to advertise for every keyword that gets a sale. Advertise for the keywords that gives you the best return on that ad spend, that produces the highest number of sales dollars for the amount of ad spend that you just spent.
Yeah.
That means that you're not, you're going to have to pull back on your total sales that you're getting through your advertising.
Mm-hmm.
But your stress level is going to go way down when you know that it's profitable and you are focused, and there's a lot less for you to manage on a weekly basis. And you're running break even or profitable. You can focus your attention on other things in your business.
And that sounds unreal to me. Seriously, my experience was exactly in the stress zone that you just mentioned. I knew I'm wasting money on advertising, but I guess I should do it because everybody's doing that. And actually, I kind of thought it's not possible to run it profitably. It's probably
it's
just the kind of tax that you need to pay.
Ultimately, I mean, there's kind of a funny joke is that the second year, this was, probably 2-3 years ago, I think it was. And I remember there was somebody out of the UK, and they were building a name for themselves as an Amazon FBA expert. And they came out and they said something that was very, they were attacking my teaching. And they say, oh, you don't need all that stuff. It's really simple. All you need to do is bid 5 cents on your keywords and you'll be profitable. And it was kind of like, on one side, admittedly at the time I was a bit offended because I'm very passionate about all the advertising knowledge that I try to teach and everything. But on the other side, I had to think about it. I kind of had to laugh because I'm like going, that's kind of like well, duh. If you're only bidding 5 cents, then you're going to be profitable. You're not going to have very much sales.
Yeah.
But you're going to be profitable. So ultimately, I kind of have to, what that taught me is, don't forget to remind people, it's like, look, you don't need to know anything about sales, about advertising rather, on Amazon. If you start advertising and you simply bid low enough, you're going to be profitable. If that's really your only concern,
Yeah.
just lower.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Or maybe
Your sales are going to be, small,
yeah.
and you're not really going to get a good feel for who your audience is.
Yeah.
But if all you're concerned about is just your advertising profitability,
yeah,
just bid less.
well, that's going to work. That's interesting. Okay. Look, Brian, let's talk about your software. Like, how does it help in this process?
So there's a lot of software that's out in this space now. Some of it is the PPC scope is more. It was the original software for Amazon sellers that was dedicated to advertising. So if you're familiar with Sellex, for instance, Franz Jordan, we actually, our software came out about the same time, 3-4 years ago, right? And he has an advertising component on his side. PPC Scope has still been dedicated specifically to advertising. That class of software is more for the do-it-yourself type of person, somebody who wants to see the advertising and understand it. It's better than simply just using the downloaded spreadsheets from Amazon and using Seller Central, where you miss a lot of insights. It gives you more insights as far as the value of each search term, the value of each keyword, and where things are trending, over the last 6 months or year, whatever the case is for your advertising. But ultimately, it's of that more of the do-it-yourself class. It's more popular among consultants who like to be more hands-on.
Yeah.
The newer ones, and there's a little bit of automation available. So if you do the same thing every single week, like that 9-step checklist that I mentioned that I'll be glad to share with you. It's something that I offer up for you. It's pretty straightforward. If you go through that on a weekly basis, then you'll understand, like, oh, okay, this covers over, covers 80% of what I need to do on a weekly basis in order to keep my costs under control on my advertising. And those kind of things within PPC Scope can be automated. You can just set it up. Okay, just run this every 3 days or run it every week, so I don't even have to look at it. That is, you can do that inside of PPC Scope. You can adjust bids. You can block, search terms. You can do all that, within PPC Scope. Some of the newer classes of advertising tools are the artificial intelligence, machine learning type of tools. And they usually require a very specific custom ad structure that they can work with. They're fairly limited in what they can do, but it is also, automated. Usually the idea of the artificial intelligence is oversold as far as what its capabilities are. And so that's why there's a lot of inconsistent results from one seller to the next as far as, oh, I had a bad experience or I had a good experience with, using any software, any training, any service. Every single, there's not a software training or service or expert out there, or agency out there that hasn't had both good and bad experiences. It's just the way it works. But it's not necessarily, I definitely recommend that sellers use a software tool, because most of the time what I see is those who are doing it by hand, who are using Campaign Manager inside of Seller Central or AMS, ads, and downloading the spreadsheets and then uploading, the spreadsheets to make changes. Usually they're spending, sometimes it's a couple hours a week, sometimes it's a couple hours a day working on their advertising.
Yeah.
Through software like PPC Scope, that usually cuts it down to maybe 15 to 20 minutes a week.
Wow.
Managing the optimization on your software, on your advertising. It gets so much simpler because of the way it automates. It allows you to identify across multiple campaigns, multiple products, ad groups, make changes to a bunch of different keywords, and then instead of you having to go out and okay, let me find this campaign, now this ad group, now this keyword, okay, let me adjust this bid. one at a time. Okay, now let me start over and do the next one.
Yeah.
It just goes boom, publish.
Wow.
It's done. So it saves you a lot of time on the basics for sure.
Very cool.
There's a lot more advanced ad types and strategies that are available. Not best for anybody who's in their first 6 months. I wouldn't worry about any of that kind of stuff. Anybody who is, selling less than, I don't know, $5,000-$10,000 a month in products, you don't need to worry about advanced ad types or advanced strategies. Stick to the basics.
Can you just name them for us, maybe as a teaser? What?
Well, it's not really. I mean, it's not really anything hidden. I'm saying as far as like these include things like dynamic bidding, product ad targeting, and what they call PAT advertising, where you can run ads against other listings. Ad placement, where you can focus in on, specifically where which ads, which location, page 1 top of search versus product detail page. There's more advanced tactics when it comes to strategy as far as how you funnel keywords from one, basically go from, the 200 keywords down to the 10 keyword kind of focus. There's different strategies that are available on that. Let's see what else. There are, sponsored brand ads, of course. There are sponsored display ads, which are basically the off Amazon remarketing ads. There are product display ads that you can do through AMS. Soon there's going to be video ads through AMS. All these things are going to be, if you're at the level where it makes a difference in your business, then you can start taking a look at those and certainly seek out expertise and training and that kind of stuff. But if you're relatively new to selling and you're still early in you could spend your time much better on other things like sourcing better quality products or getting better margins in sourcing your products or identifying new product opportunity, and obviously more product related tactics than the advertising. Just use the advertising to identify your audience and then focus in on, identify the search terms that your audience is using to get to your product and to purchase your product. And then focus in on those keywords that produce most of your sales profitably.
Nice.
You don't need to keep running, huge ads on trying to get in front of all the audience all the time. Focus in on what it is you're trying to, what's your objective of the advertising. Who's my audience? Great. Now let me focus just on those my audience that performs the best. That's it.
Very, very nice and very clear, I believe. Look, Brian, tell us about your agency and where can we find you? Maybe there are some listeners out there who would like to work with you.
The URL for my agency is it's Canopy, CANOPY.management. So .com is just .management. So Canopy.management. That agency is we're basically a high-end professional Amazon advertising agency that caters to brands that sell at least $1 million a year on Amazon. I don't know the translation for euros or rubles or anything. I don't know. Rupee, and we know all the advanced, things, right? All the advanced tactics, of course. I've got the PPC Scope software. I did have a training course, Sponsored Products Academy, that has not been updated since early 2018. And so it does not include some of the newer ad types like the product ad targeting and the ad placements and that type of thing. But it still is a phenomenal course. I mean, it still gets plenty of awards and everything, even though it hasn't been updated in a year. But that's Sponsored Products Academy. And then for those that primarily we have English speakers or bilingual inside of the Facebook group. It's the Amazon PPC Troubleshooting Facebook group.
Nice.
About 15,000 of us in there that collaborate and ask questions on a regular basis, and
Very
people
cool.
are well.
Cool. So we're going to put all the links into the description for those who are watching this. And Brian, thanks so much. I think it was really, really valuable and very specific. So I learned a lot. And I'd be happy to have you as a guest again, maybe to discuss some of the advanced techniques. And by the way, you were one of the most requested guests on our show. By
Really?
Yes.
Well, here's what I'll tell you is that this kind of what I was mentioning before is, like I said, two of my staff who are more advanced. They're part of my advanced ad team. They both. One is in. I'm trying to think now. One's in Ukraine, I think. The other one's in Belarus. But they both speak. They're both fluent in Russian, in German, and they can be also be great resources. So I would love to join you again, but I think there's more resources on our team that could also kind of give you a different, different faces.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
In the right language.
Nice. So thanks so much, and have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you very much. All right.
Thanks so much for watching this video, and I hope you liked it. If you did, then please give us a like. This would be a great motivation for us. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you're notified about our new videos. Check out our software, sellerboard.com. If you don't have a profit analytics tool, or if you have another one, then I'm very sure we'll be able to convince you. The link is in the description, and we have a 1-month free trial. See you next time, guys. Bye-bye.